Hey everybody, this is Daniel. Welcome to the World Cup update. This week, we're only about 50 days away from kickoff. So I want to show you some new fun ways of looking at the data, which markets are up, which markets are down, and how demand is changing across all 16 of the host cities. Let's go ahead and get into it. And right off the bat, apologies for not having a World Cup update last week. Things happen, I flew too close to the sun, and my dashboard got a little too elaborate and it crashed. But the good news is I fixed it and made it even better. So this week we'll be looking at some fun new visuals that I think you'll like, and I'm going to compress the format a little bit as well to get this all under 10 minutes so I can put this on LinkedIn. But let's go ahead and start, as always, with our top 3 gainers, our top 3 losers. So I'm going to start over here with this July 3rd Kansas City game. One thing that you'll notice is some of the games that are top movers now are the non-group stage matches. So we've got some matches going on here that are perhaps a little bit more speculative because we don't know who's going to be playing in these matches. But the July 3rd Kansas City round of 32 game has jumped almost 10% over the past 7 days. And then in Kansas City again, we've got an 11.3% jump for Algeria versus Austria. And then Kansas City again taking the number 1 slot here. This is the quarterfinal in Kansas City, has jumped almost 15% since last week. So we're seeing some pretty good jumps here for the Kansas City market. So here are the markets that are dropping the most over the past 7 days. And these are all in Mexico. So June 20th, Monterrey. I'm seeing a lot of downward pricing pressure in Monterrey right now. And again, it ties in with the fact that they didn't get a Mexico home game. They've got really competitive pressures from short-term rentals as well. Monterrey, Mexico is one of these markets where there's a lot of short-term rentals in this market. They're for the most part, more than half of them are competing with hotels, and they're way cheaper than a hotel room right now. So not surprised to see this Tunisia versus Japan game coming down. Also, too, their round of 32 game that they're getting on June 29th has also dropped by 7.6%. And then the biggest drop, this is a little bit of a surprise, over the past 7 days, but Mexico City's Uzbekistan versus Colombia game has come down about 7.7% in the past week. So that's one to keep an eye on. It may be due to the fact that Uzbekistan is a first-timer, kind of an unproven in the tournament. Colombia, I think, will have lots of healthy demand, but it may be that Uzbekistan demand is just not really panning out. All right, so let's get into some of the fun new views that I've added here. I want to start with this heat map. This is a pricing heat map that is going to show you all the dates that are hot and cold versus when we first started tracking this 200 days out. So I want to show you some of the markets that are looking really strong across the board, some of the markets that are looking really weak across the board, and the vast majority of other markets, it's a mixed bag where you've got some of the game days are really hot, but then a lot of the shoulder dates are starting to come down. So let's call out a few things. I've talked about this on social media and some of our other videos as well, but the Houston market continues to basically be the strongest market right now in terms of who's actually pushing rate for the World Cup. Now, you'll remember that Houston was the lowest starting baseline for pricing of all 16 markets. So Houston, if you look starting 200 days out from the kickoff of the World Cup, their prices were lowest. So that means that people, I think, are looking for value for the World Cup, and they're finding it in Houston, especially in the group stage. Houston's got a convenient airport. They've got cheap hotel pricing. They've got a relatively good schedule. So not too surprised to see this, but I am a little bit surprised that it's quite this strong. Kansas City continues to pick up some really good momentum as well. Lots of games in Kansas City. We're already the highest demand index in the entire tournament, but we're starting to see even some weekday lift now around some of these non-game dates, especially in the group stage, are looking nice and strong. And of course, the pricing growth for that round of 32 game and down here, the quarterfinal game has just been absolutely explosive since the 200-day mark. Let's contrast that with Monterrey, a market that we just saw in our bottom 3 movers. Now, Monterrey is seeing somewhat decent pricing growth, but really only for this particular set of dates here. The Sunday right before that round of 32 game, that's really the night that's seeing good pricing growth versus 200 days out. Otherwise, Monterrey is really dropping heavily. And I think it has to do, again, with the strength of schedules, not that great in Monterey. They don't get that many games in Monterey. And there's also some supply factors to consider. The fact that short-term rentals are actually really competitive in Monterey. You've still got every single date of the World Cup is coming down in New York City, and Vancouver, most days of the World Cup are coming down here, with the exception of some non-game dates out here in July. That's probably just strong general summer demand going on in July. I don't even think that, these dates that do have some meager growth, I think that's probably even unrelated to the World Cup, to be honest. And then it's a more complicated story for most markets right now. It really just depends on how good is the game that they're getting. You see these little bright spots of pricing growth, especially for, Philadelphia's Brazil game, or Seattle's USA versus Australia game looks really good. You've also got Spain versus Cape Verde there in Atlanta that has some good growth. And then in Mexico, we've got Mexico versus Czechia. That's showing good pricing growth right now. So some promising trends in here, mixed in with a lot of shoulder dates that continue to lower for the World Cup. Lastly, let's wrap up with this. This is a brand new view that I've just added here to our dashboard, but this is the Lighthouse Demand Index for every single date of the World Cup. This is game dates and non-game dates across all 16 markets, and we're seeing some pretty big increases. If I toggle this view here, we're seeing some big increases in Kansas City, so specifically the Argentina versus Algeria game is showing an increase in demand. We've got Ecuador versus Curacao, as well as Algeria and Australia that are big jumps. And then also too, Vancouver is starting to increase quite a bit as well. So Vancouver for pricing, this is the hallmark market that started extremely high with rates up in the $1,200, $1,500 range, and they've just been dropping very precipitously ever since. But we're starting to see an uptick in demand. So this could mean that we're starting to reach that equilibrium point where Vancouver hoteliers have now dropped rate enough that they are finally starting to see some pickup here. I'll need to see this play out in the pricing data before I say that that's definitively what's happening, but we are seeing some good demand index increases for some of these World Cup dates out here in Vancouver. So I'm going to keep it quick this week. That's all I wanted to show you, is just a couple of these quick new views. I hope this was informative, and stick around. Next week we'll have another World Cup update.